with a little story that actually happened. And I think most of us, if not all of us in this place, had experienced it. It was a story of buying a water gallon for my home. I remember that usually the one who ordered water gallon in my home is either my wife or my maid, our maid. And I remember one time I was looking at the WhatsApp chat actually, and my wife ordered the water gallon not by typing anything, but actually using a water gallon sticker, and then just the number of the gallon that she wants. And then the courier will just say, okay, and then it will just happen like that. And it was an interesting story because I think in a way, conversational messaging or conversational marketing have been the cornerstone of our marketing strategy since the get-go. Even if we say now that conversation is something really important, let's say like live stream shopping where people do an auction or people do shopping through the chat, we've been doing it since the get-go. It's been the cornerstone of what marketing is. But if we have to sit here now talking about a conversational marketing or conversational messaging, then what really interesting is now we have Mas Dinoy, which is from Unilever, and Mas Aldo, which is from Meta, and I bet both from different verticals have your own experience on what is actually the sign that conversational messaging and conversational marketing is suddenly become more important than before. What is I think the catalyst of it in your own experience? Like, let's say that our world of marketing is a film. What is the scene that makes you think, oh, you know what? Something have to change here. Conversational marketing is something that we have to hyper-focus on. What is it that happened in your vertical? I think we could start with Mas Dinoy. What happened?
Okay, I'm not sure if I were to use movie as an analogy, but probably it would be like when Avengers, they need to assemble. Because, I mean, if you look at all marketing channels are like these superheroes, right? Each of them actually have their own rules. And I think conversational or one-to-one messaging is just like one of the hero. But as they just one of the hero, they won't be able to win by themselves. So I think it's part of the mix. And each of these hero will have the backstory. So I think that's the kind of it. And I think when it comes into conversational, right, it's always been there. Because if you think of it, when you go to the wet market ever since probably 50 years ago, even when I wasn't born yet, it is a conversation with the seller, right? And also, like you've mentioned, live stream, there is always already a home shopping experience, even back when we were still like in the 90s already, and people would just go call out and then ask for details. So it's always been there, I think, and it's I think fundamentally the human nature to be able to engage and converse to people rather than probably to machine, right? And I think to answer also your question on what's actually becoming the catalyst, because the behavior is always there, but I think, and this is probably where Mas Aldo, because now the convenience of all the personalization, smartphone is there, application is there, WhatsApp is there. I think we use WhatsApp in daily basis, so it's much easier for consumer and also from the business perspective as well.
So it's the technology changes that actually push forward the fact that we are the three of us here now talking about conversational messaging. Now, what do you think, Ms. Amasaldo? What is that one scene? What is that catalyst that you think, oh yeah, this makes conversational messaging is even more important now?
Thank you, Mas Gala. I think I'm trying to connect the movie analogy, right? It's hard, but let me try. So talking about Avengers, right? I think if you talk about conversational business or conversational, just look at Captain America, right? I think what he does is trying to amplify all the team, right? In fact, talking about business messaging, it has to do with conversational. The core component is conversational, and it's nothing new. For all while, right? Business and consumer, they converse since back then. What happened is the advent of technology created that experience at scale. So the essence is still there, conversational. And I think with that, you have the familiarity from the consumer side. From the business, it's basically the reach at scale, creating the least reduced cost to serve and eventually sales, using the tools that is familiar across businesses, consumers.
So the technology helped. There's a certain scalability here that is actually going even further. And I do agree with that because even in my part, which is video, for example, we showcase a lot of OTT content, such as original series, such as Sinetron even. And in that part, having an interactive content where they can chat, where they can interact with the content is very important in getting them to watch the content again. So I do agree with that, technology and scalability. But then the biggest question now that we are aligned in terms of what actually driven the conversational messaging or marketing, then the biggest question now is that, for example, Mas Dinoy from Unilever, especially in nutrition, what has been the biggest challenge that you see rising up in terms of conversational messaging in the Southeast Asian market? What is that certain challenge that you think rise up because of the technological advancement and the scalability?
Yeah, I think the main challenge when it comes into conversational messaging is more towards the very first and the very beginning is the expectation, because I think. So, and this is also aligned with the previous discussion about performance and brand building, like what do you use conversational marketing for? And especially in FMCG, it is actually not, maybe also not in human nature to buy a sachet of Royco from WhatsApp and then get it delivered to your door.
Like in the get-go.
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
right? So I think it's going to be like a different approach for every verticals as well. And from technological perspective, of course, different market in Southeast Asia actually using a different platform when it comes into messaging. That's one. And of course, the second is also about the language barrier that we have, right?
So.
Because of course, Indonesia, we are in Indonesia, we talk bahasa Indonesia, but then when you go into Thailand, you need to speak Thai, and then in Philippines, you also need to incorporate Tagalog and some English on it. So it's a different. And I think as someone that has a few of the region, it's also trying to incorporate some similarities, but then, the local deployment is also becoming quite a challenge as well. And as you know, the scale that we're doing when it comes into conversational messaging, there has to be part of automation. There has to be still part of authenticity as well. It is much harder to control automation at scale when you're actually talking to different people. Whereas it's also the same to control authenticity when it's machine. So we need to balance between the both as well. So it's actually one of the challenge.
But that's an interesting question, because you say, like, for example, FMCG. It's definitely not something that, through WhatsApp messaging or maybe like a chat messaging, whatever, you want to buy a sachet of Royco, for example. So then when we talk about conversational messaging, what is actually the best goal here? What is actually we're trying to get out of optimizing conversational messaging? What is actually the objective that we should look forward, at least since the beginning, at least from the start of it? What is it that you think? If it's not buying a sachet of Royco like instantly because of a chat, I think I want to start with Mas Dinoy first. What should be the goal here?
Yeah. So I think it's a different, again, back to the fundamental that we need to set the expectation for conversational messaging, right? And I think I've worked across different industries as well, even before Unilever. I think in fashion, when you want to buy clothes, people actually asking, even when you already display the price, they still ask about the price. How much is it? And even when you already say, okay, the size is large and then this is the chest width, they still ask.
They still ask
that.
again.
Correct. So people still want to clarify. And I think the idea is to, first thing first, when it comes into conversational messaging, is to be able to answer that, right? Because, and it's all the same across all industries. Like when you ask about the size of the clothes, when you ask about the cost of education in Indonesia or America, or when you ask about the ingredients inside one Royco sachet, if it's not answering the question, then I think, that's the very first thing that we need to aim for. Now, the second is that, can we lead that to conversion, right? in some cases, like when you're selling clothes, yes, you can, right? Because when they feel that okay, it fits with me, then maybe I will buy. But then for when it comes into selling ingredients, maybe it's not about selling. Maybe it's all about inspiring them with something that they would want to cook later today or tomorrow, right? And how we can actually arrange when you want to go shopping, how many of lettuce that you need to buy, how many chickens that you need to buy, and how many packs of Royco that you need to buy. So there's also one part of conversational messaging, and it's not something that you can get out of the box experience if it's not conversational and two-way discussions.
That is really interesting. Mas Aldo, what do you think? If the goal is not to get that instant conversion, then what should be the goal when we're trying to strategically think about conversational messaging or, in an extent, conversational marketing? What should be the goal?
If the goal is solely for instant conversion, then I think we need to look at conversational business into two components. Number one is how you design the acquisition, because conversational business, meaning like sending messages to a particular set of customer, it's something that has to be thought with privacy in mind, right?
True.
Even now, I think you see that there are a lot of influx of spam coming up in your, for example, WhatsApp. But then you have to think about how we can do the acquisition, right? I really like what Mas Dinoy mentioned about, number one, I think we need to kind of like tease customer to want to engage with the brand. Like the study that we had, we did a survey, about 80% of population that is online in Indonesia, about 80% of them, they message business once a week. But at the same time, 82% of them mentioned that they want that experience is the same that I would have when I'm chatting with Mas Dinoy in WhatsApp. So that means it's not about selling, right? It's about having that conversational experience, that personalization, if I may. So that's important. But to make it more practical, is instant conversion. That means you need to have the relevancy right. I would like to maybe set an example in one industry that is focused on utility, right? Think about if, hypothetically, electric company, PLN, right? We have a prepaid voucher that we need to top up. You imagine that if before you're running out of your electricity, that the beeping sound at home. I don't know how many people have the prepaid at home. I do. It's very inconvenient. You would have WhatsApp notification to remind you just before that happened. That's instant conversion, but that's also relevant at the same time. So I think that has to be designed with relevancy in mind.
Yeah. But even if we say that's instant conversion, it's more like a relatable and contextual consideration even. Having that personal relationship, like what Mas Dinoy said, when that chat happened, when you already have a personal relationship with that WhatsApp, that would even be stronger, right? But this gets more interesting. When we say that, for example, your PLN or your electricity credit is running out, and then you get that notification. It means that there's a certain targeting there, right? There's a certain data there. Is conversational messaging, and in an extent conversational marketing itself, have impact towards the first-party data that we are trying to accrue? And even if it's so, what kind of data are we expecting out of this exercise, for example? Mas Dinoy?
Yeah, I think it's also a fundamental technical point of view, right? When it comes into acquiring this first-party data, so that we can actually engage with them, right? Because otherwise, like what Mas Aldo mentioned, it's just going to be a spam. You don't sign up for this, but then why do I get this broadcast messages? Let alone I would engage with you, I will just probably block you out, right? And I think the idea is to ensure that as a marketer, we need to understand that. I think there's also a session on data privacy alone before that. We do need to have this consent from them, because without this consent, then it's not going to be, we can't do anything to them, right? And actually, there is also insight before, like when we have the data, now what will we do with it, right? Like Mas Aldo mentioned, the relevancy. Once we know more about this person, like, when their token is almost running out and then it's the right time to message them, then that's one. if within 3 hours you're gonna be, break your fast, then you might need to actually cook something. So at that time, that only we will message you. And it has to be relevant. It has to be also, legally reaching them and within the data privacy as well. So it's very
So personalization is something that is important in getting that kind of data. What do you think can achieve it effectively? What can achieve personalization effectively? What do you think?
I think when it comes into personalization, it's I don't get where the echo is coming. Yeah. So when it comes into personalization, it has to be a personalization that matters, right? Like for example, in our case in nutrition, like when we're doing this communications for people, if we do a broadcast message in Idul Adha and then sending a message about using the Royco beef to cook something, then it's gonna be a personalization. But if we do it like in the midnight, where people is not actually looking at they're not even awake, right? So we need to ensure that there is a certain level of personalization there. And we need to also ensure that to a certain extent, whether these people is actually the one who cook or they just the one who eats, right? So even up to that level, of course, by all means we can always do personalization, but what we need to make sure is that this personalization help them and makes things convenience, because I think conversational messaging is like the expectation of people is like talking human to human. It was never about talking human to robot, right?
Or even to brand that is not a human.
Correct.
Mas Aldo, what do you think? So the first question was whether this conversational messaging have any, red line towards first-party data, and if it's about personalization, getting that data, what is the most effective way on achieving that? What do you think?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, we need to design with privacy in mind. Like in WhatsApp, for example, opt-in and opt-out is hygiene, right? I think imagine if you are running a campaign, for example, in the acquisition part of the campaign, when people see ads, and then it will drive them to go to the conversational chat, be that WhatsApp, and then you have an opt-in option. Any point in time in the touch point, you have an opt-out. So that's number one. That's very important, to put the control into the end consumer hand. And then second, I think coming to the how to build an effective strategy is all about the funnel, right? Conversational business, conversational commerce, you can say it as well. It's two-way street. It's not just you sending message, but it's also be able to respond towards customer, right? So think about the funnel. For example, as Dinoy mentioned about Royco, right? You don't have to sell Royco, through WhatsApp or through messaging. But how about building that awareness by, giving option of recipes, for example, right? I think that will create awareness, right? And that will create intent. If you're a bank, one of the things that is strong in the conversational is about leads. It's a complex product. Think about house loan, right? Mortgages. It's a complex financial product where people ask a lot of questions. So that's where the two-way streak, the two-way conversation kicks in, right? How you want to design it? Are you going to design with a human agent who's going to respond, which I still believe that is effective if you're talking about complex product with a long life cycle? Or you want to create a more kind of like a simple template where people can do like make it easier for them to choose option to come to their point where, it could be a conversion point. So that will come back to the business, right? But if you're a bank, that will be the case. But if you're more a typical utility company that, focus more on, commodity product, right? As it happened, people just want to have a convenience, few steps and then top up, for example. Then you create a more simple steps for your consumer to be able to get to the conversion point. So I think it all depends what industry and what point at which stage you are in this conversational business. Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, one of the most important part that I get from both of you is that conversational messaging and at the extent conversational marketing is again about building that relationship and getting a deeper consideration in that part, right? The experience and everything like that. And you've been saying that it's scalable. And creating a scalable conversational messaging is actually challenging, right? Because you have to have a lot of people, right, to actually do the chatting and replying and everything like that. And I think in the industry right now, we talk a lot about ChatGPT, for example, the rise of AI in terms of creating copies or even answering things. So the question is, with this kind of technological development, the rise of AI, will it be significant in terms of conversational messaging? I think that's the first question. And the second one, if we use AI such as ChatGPT, can we still get that kind of convenience or even personalization out of it? What do you guys think? What do you think, Mas Dinoy?
I think the one thing that we need to understand as a marketer, or first and foremost human, is that not to let the engine or the AI takes decision, right? The decision maker is still us human. So I think there needs to be somehow not a barrier, but like a gatekeeping to ensure that yes, this tool will help us provide in a instant way options, but the decisions will still need to be on our side. They can, of course, give us like, these are the two decisions, two options. What are the and this is in response to conversational marketing. Like even for example, in my previous role in the previous companies, we've actually created this AI on how customer service will, when they do an inbound message from consumer, like I mentioned, asking about the size of clothing, they already have a predefined answer from AI. And human will be the one taking decision which one is the right answer, which in return it will also train the AI, right? So I think the same concept needs to be done similarly, so that we are still in control of what it is doing, right? Otherwise, I think it's just gonna.
So AI as a tool, but a human as still the user.
Correct.
What do you think, Mas Aldo?
Yeah. So I like to circle back to the point where, do you need like a lot of people kind of to support this whole conversational business, right? Conversational messaging. Probably the answer, not necessarily. It depends. If you are like building a customer service experience for a complex product that is not yet replaceable by AI, yes. I think there are a couple of banks that is implementing that very well with human agent. But if you're looking at, getting your customer move to one stage to another, right? Or getting your customer to buy something. Probably before AI, there are certain tools that is already available, right? It's simply like how you would design the conversational flow as simple, right? Least friction as possible. Think about it. If you have to chat to buy something, you will drop off after a few chats already because it's just tedious, right? You probably would go to e-commerce. A lot easier, right? So if you probably design more like a choice, right? For example, in WhatsApp for business, we have list messages, call to action button. Just simply people just press a button instead of type. That will already do tremendous kind of like experience, will lead to the conversion customer. However, AI is important. We look at more at the personalization. It's not about the ability about how AI will respond to customer, replacing the human agent. But think about this. If you're looking at commerce, right, trying to buy clothes, for example, and then AI would be able to recommend the right set of catalogs of choices to you through chat experience. I think that will do a fabulous job in order for customer will feel that personalization, and they would tend to recommend brand to others, right?
Yeah.
So I think I see that as something that probably not in the near term, but we are heading there.
Yeah, because I think that what I get from all our conversation, the conversational marketing or conversational messaging is important now, especially in getting that deep connection with our audience, trying to get them at the right time, right? So in a sense, when we talk about conversational messaging, conversational marketing, it's about personalization. We've been talking a lot about that. I think you issued about convenience on how people can talk about it. And in an extent, it's about getting them to engage, right? Engagement. And of course, once we have conversation with them, it means that we have a community. of that. So it's personalization, convenience, engagement, and an extent community handling. If a company or if a brand want to invest for conversational messaging and conversational marketing, which one should they hyper focus on first? Is it personalization first that they should invest in, or convenience, or about getting engagement, or is it about community handling? Which one do you think should be where they focus on, like the low-hanging fruit that they should invest first? What do you think, Mas Dinoy?
I guess out of that, well, the very first and fundamental is definitely the data privacy and safety first.
As the hygiene, right?
Correct, as the hygiene. Because I think if a company want to start here, I think that's the very important part, because I think it is something that we, as a marketer and as a brand, we don't want to get into an issue on that front, right? Definitely. And then I think once we get past all of the hygiene, then I think as a Unilever, we always believe that our work start with consumer, right? And I think for consumer, the very first thing that they will want to look in the channel is more on a convenience perspective. Like what you mentioned, right? If you can only send one sticker, why bother chatting? Hey mas, saya mau ini dan ini. One sticker, done. Convenient, very convenient. So I think convenience comes first, and then once we get that convenience, and then it comes personalization, engagement, and so on and so forth.
Mas Aldo.
Couldn't agree more. I think, yes, hygiene is important, that privacy. But I think building with convenience in mind, by that I mean how we can reduce friction, right? I think that's very important. I think I don't want to go to WhatsApp if it's more tedious than if I would go through app, for example, or any other channel, right? Built by how you reduce friction with simplicity in mind. But very important that when I observing brand, right, the element of consistency, right? You need to have a plan, right? Building a experience through conversational is not one-off, definitely. It's a journey, right? You need to keep on refining, right? Find the right, improvement area across, time frame. That's number one. That's very important. And then as you graduate, I think that personalization, right? Having that AI,
then
how
it
you
became
can
important.
Reduce your cost to serve at scale and so on, become important. Eventually, conversion is important about sales, right? But I think the hygiene factor, the fundamental basic, I think is very important.
So that's it. Conversational messaging is coming back hard because of technological advancement. It's not about instant conversion. It's about getting that relationship. But at the first, it's all about convenient, getting them to chat you. So I think that's it about conversational messaging. Thank you so much, Mas Dinoy. Thank you so much, Mas Aldo. I hope that have been a thought-provoking session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.